And we go to another alleged source, which is, could it be from Muhammad? Now, for the sake of argument alone, let us just consider that, yes, maybe he fabricated it. But what were the motives? Because each and every one of us would do something out of certain motives. We wouldn't do something without having some motivation behind it, especially if it includes a lot of effort, a lot of suffering, a lot of sacrifices made for the sake of this, if you want to say, fabricated mission. Was it wealth? Well, we can say no, because the financial situation of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was way better than after the mission. If you want to say, before the mission, he was wealthier, he had a successful trade. After the mission, and especially after he declared, his mission to the people, they started boycotting him, and no one dealt with him, and his trade was losing, and even his wife has sold, all her property to support the Muslims who were boycotted collectively. And even after Islam became victorious, even after the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not have wealth. He did not have castles or gold and jewels like kings and princes have usually. He did his own housework. He helped his wives, and this is something. It's a fact. Muslim men are supposed to follow the footsteps of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and help their wives at home. It's a fact. Because people think otherwise. They think that a Muslim is supposed to sit down and he'll be bossing around his wife to cook for him and to clean for him, etc. All right? And he had a very modest life. Even when he died, he gave away everything that he had, which was a few coins, if you want to say. He gave it for charity. He didn't want to leave this world with some money left in his household. So it cannot be wealth. Could it be power? Some people say, yeah, it wasn't wealth, but it was power. Some people prefer power over wealth. But how was the behavior of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if you want to say? He was known for his modesty. As we said, he didn't have like those bodyguards with suits. Now, back in those days, they didn't have Armani suits. They had different brands. He didn't have a crown. He didn't have a castle or a throne. SubhanAllah. He also used to work with the companions. He built the masjid with them. He dug the trench around the Medina with them. When they were attacked by 10,000 men from different tribes, from the coalition of tribes trying to attack the Muslims. He gathered wood for fire whenever they wanted to cook. He didn't sit around and give commands to the people. And he also refrained his companions from overpraising him like a king, like Caesar or Khosrow or Kisra, or as Christians did in regards of Prophet Jesus. They exaggerated in his praise and that they considered him divine. So he forbade them. He was really telling them that I am a servant of Allah as you are, but I am also a messenger of Allah. So he wasn't seeking his own personal glory behind this mission. He also has shown great mercy over people. He had victory over many people, but he showed mercy. The greatest example is in Mecca. When the conquest of Mecca was done, the Muslims were the most powerful. They had the upper hand. He had the chance to kill those who killed his uncle, kill those who tried to kill him and tortured his companions, but he didn't do that. He forgave them, and he declared his general amnesty. So it cannot be power and glory and domination. Now, we eliminated any kind of motive that could have been behind the message of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, if we were to ask an Orientalist like Bosworth Smith, in his book Muhammad and Mohammedanism, printed in London in 1874, page 92, he said, he was Caesar, Muhammad, peace be upon him, was Caesar and Pope in one. He had the temporal and spiritual authorities. But he was Pope without Pope's pretensions. Caesar without the legions of Caesar, without a standing army, without a bodyguard, without a palace, without a fixed revenue. If ever any man had the right to say that he ruled by the right divine, it was Muhammad. For he had all the power without its instruments and without its supports. Another fact which refutes the claim that Muhammad, peace be upon him, fabricated the message of Islam or his mission, that he had an immense credit of morality, and he was known for his sincerity. All the Arabs around him knew him for 40 years before the revelation, or the first revelation, and they knew that he was unlettered as well. Moreover, they never experienced from him lying and wickedness or treacherous or cheating. And they always called him as as-sadiq al-amin, the truthful, the trustworthy. This was, if you want to say, these were his titles, his two main titles, even before he received the revelation. At the same time, we have another fact that many wealthy Arabs at that time, from among his enemies as well, entrusted him with their money, even after his prophethood, even after they started opposing him and fighting him, they kept their money with him. Now imagine yourself opening a bank account at a bank that you don't trust its owner, you see, and you know him to be a liar. So there was some kind of discrepancy here in their position for him. They trusted him with their wealth, but they didn't trust him with their faith. And moreover, we can show another fact for his sincerity and for his immense credit of morality, is that when he left from Mecca to Medina, when he migrated, he had left his cousin Ali radiallahu anh, to return the money to its owners. He didn't say, this money belongs to the kuffar, I will take it and spend it on the poor people, poor Muslims. He didn't act, like Robin Hood style. He was, sincere and trustworthy even with his enemies. Now, about, if you want to say, Muhammad's, the fact that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was unlettered. People at that time heard the Quran, and the Quran mentioned that Muhammad was unlettered. Had the Quran been in contradiction with reality, be it that Muhammad knows how to read and write, but the Quran is saying otherwise, thousands of his contemporaries, his enemies and his companions as well, you see, would have left him. They would have rejected him. They wouldn't have followed him. Let's give some examples about these verses. And these verses, by the way, were revealed in Mecca. They were not revealed when Islam was in power in Medina. They were revealed at the days of persecution and weakness of the Muslims. Let us see the verses. So believe in Allah and His Messenger, the unlettered Prophet, and Nabiyul Ummi, who believes in Allah and His words. The other verse, which is clear, even clearer about his, the fact that he was unlettered, and you were not, O Muhammad, peace be upon him, able to recite a book before this book came, the Quran, nor are you able to transcribe it with your right hand, or to write it. In that case, indeed, would the talkers of vanities have doubted. If you, O Muhammad, knew how to read and write before the Quran was revealed, then they would have the right to doubt about the source of this revelation. So, if we proceed also, we would find, and this is another point to refute this alleged source, there are so many scientific facts in the Quran, mentioned in the Quran. Now, of course, the Quran is not a book of science. It's not a book of physics or biology or chemistry. But the fact that these facts were mentioned in the 7th century, when scientific knowledge was very little, you see, by a person who lived in Arabia, and he was unlettered, he didn't receive any education, he didn't have Google at that time, you see, or Wikipedia. He didn't have any access to information that we have today. He didn't have the equipment to examine, creation or the universe or anything like that in order to make conclusions and write them down. So they would, if you want to say, be in concordance with contemporary science and knowledge. So let us examine some of these facts. And we have a very important criterion here is that we should only use clear verses that speak about the facts, and we should not try to twist the meaning so that we can make it a scientific miracle, and we should talk only about scientific facts, not theories. First, the stages of the embryonic development. There's a lot to talk about that. A medical expert can do this better than me, and if we go to a medical expert from Canada, Professor Keith Moore, and when he saw the translation of these texts, because he doesn't know Arabic, he stated the following fact. He said, as far as it is known from the history of embryology, little was known about the staging and classification of human embryos until the 20th century. For this reason, the description of the human embryo in the Quran cannot be based on scientific knowledge in the 7th century. The only reasonable conclusion is these descriptions were revealed to Muhammad from God, although he wasn't a Muslim at that time when he said that. He became Muslim about 8 to 9 years after he made this statement. He could not have known such details because he was an unlettered man or illiterate man with absolutely no scientific training. Now, there are many verses also about the origin of the universe and that the universe was created. And as we know today, many of nowadays cosmologists confirm the fact that the universe had a beginning at the Big Bang. And this fact was also mentioned in the Quran, that the universe began to exist, and it did not exist eternally. The fact about the expansion of the universe, and from the moment, as Edwin Hubble discovered, from the moment of the Big Bang, the universe has been constantly expanding at a great speed. Scientists compare the expanding universe to the surface of a balloon that is inflated. And that was mentioned in the Quran. وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. And it is we, this is the royal we, to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who have constructed the heaven with might, and verily it is we who are steadily expanding it. مُوسِعُونَ. It is expanding in a steady pace. Some other fact about the mountains, it is mentioned in the Quran that the mountains have deep roots to keep the earth from constantly shaking. You see, and these mountains are like pegs. You see, they have underlying deep roots, and pegs are used to fix a tent, and the tents were known at that time, especially for the Arabian nomads. And this fact was discovered recently by geologists of the 20th century. Now, there's another fact about the atmospheric pressure. As elevation rises, atmospheric pressure goes down as the atmosphere becomes thinner. Therefore, the amount of oxygen entering the bloodstream declines, and it becomes harder to breathe. As the air sacs grow narrow and contract, we feel as if we cannot breathe. In the comparison made in the verse below that we're going to show now, this physical truth, the changes that take place in the chest with increasing height, is indicated in these terms. The last part of it, يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا كَأَنَّمَا يَصَّعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ. And this is the words in italic. He makes his chest narrow and constricted as if he were climbing up into the sky. Now, could it be just like climbing a mountain or going up a certain hill? Now, the word يَصَّعَّد is not يَصْعَد, because it is from صَعَدَ. If you're going to talk about someone who's climbing at a normal pace, step by step, climbing or hiking a mountain, you see, you would say يَصْعَد. But when you say يَصَّعَد, you have emphasized the middle letter here, which means that there's some kind of speed and some kind of strength, you see, in terms of going at a very high speed, at a very high pace. And this is, very well known for those who are familiar with Arabic grammar. يَصَّعَدُ فِي السَّمَاء, going up into the atmosphere at a very high speed. Now, camels at that time, and even our times, don't fly. I mean, it was almost impossible for anyone to have such an experience. Even if someone was thrown with a catapult, you see, he wouldn't go very high up to the sky, and he wouldn't have time to write down what he is experiencing, and he wouldn't survive the experience to tell them what he felt while he was ascending at a very high speed. It is only possible if you had a jet plane at that time. So how could Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, possibly know about this while there were no jet planes at this time, and as we said, camels or even horses don't fly? And, how would he know about this experience? The final scientific fact for today is that iron was sent down due to explosions called novas or supernovas, because our solar system cannot produce iron. It's one of the heavy metals, if you want to say. Now, if you examine in any encyclopedia under the word iron, you'll find out that iron was sent down from outer space to our planet. And this fact was also mentioned in the Quran that, iron was sent down. وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ. We sent down the iron, in which is material for mighty war, and benefits, as well as benefits for mankind. Now, a big question here. How could Muhammad have possibly known all this more than 1400 years ago, when scientists have only recently discovered this using advanced equipment and powerful microscopes and telescopes, which did not exist at that time? This is a question that waits for an answer.